testify starting this week in his $250 million civil fraud trial. This is the same trial where Donald Trump stormed out of the courtroom earlier this week after taking the stand and being fined 10 grand for violating a gag order for making disparaging remarks about courtroom staff. Speaking of gag orders, following reporting by ABC News that his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was granted immunity in the D.C. federal election interference case, Special Counsel Jack Smith is asking Judge Chutkan to reinstate a gag order in that trial after Trump commented on the report on social media. Trump's attorney overnight responded to the argument, calling it, quote, baseless, and accused the special counsel of leaking the Meadows story to the media. Joining me now on set, live in person, Melissa Murray, professor at NYU School of Law, co-host of the podcast Strict Scrutiny, and the author of The Trump Indictments, the historic charging documents with commentary. She's also done that with Andrew Weissman. Professor Murray, welcome back to the Sunday Show.
Nice to be here in person.
I mean, okay, we've got the three oldest Trump kids taking the stand one day after the other. I think Daddy Trump's going to be on the stand also in that trial. What can we expect?
Well, I think these are going to be the days that really bring the explosive magic. It's been kind of a modest affair. Certainly, Donald Trump flounced out of the courtroom last week. That was pretty explosive. But I think this is where the rubber really meets the road. We're going to hear from these children, adult children, Don Jr., Eric, who actually run the company, the work that's been going on here. And we're really going to have them basically being grilled about how they valued certain things, whether they were being truthful. And all of this is in service of the ultimate goal here, which is to determine the legal penalties, because the company has already been found guilty of fraud.
Right. I was going to say.
Well, not guilty, civilly liable.
Civilly liable for fraud. And so I was about to ask, well, why? We already know they're liable for fraud, so why bring them in? But it's to
the penalty phase. They're trying to determine the amount of the liability that's going to be assessed against the company, and also to determine whether Don Jr., Eric, and Donald Trump himself will ever be able to operate or run a business in New York State.
Ivanka Trump is taking the
Yes.
stand, but isn't she? She's not a part of this case.
So she
Remind me.
She had been a defendant, but an appeals court ruled her out of this case. So she's here just as a witness. And that may be a pretty uncomfortable Thanksgiving at Mar-a-Lago at this point. So there's that.
Right. Okay. So what are there maximums in terms of the penalty in this civil trial?
So it's a civil trial. So this is not a situation where anyone is going to do time, but there will be monetary penalties. There may be restitution. And of course, there is this really big penalty. You cannot actually do business, operate a business in New York State, which for these three individuals has been their livelihood for the last 20 years.
And the likelihood that Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue and 56th Street might not be Trump Tower?
I mean, again,
could that be part of the
possibly? There's a lot up for grabs here, but mostly, these are civil penalties. These are not criminal penalties. So much of this is about damages, fines, restitution, real penalties, but not the kinds of penalties we see associated with the other cases that are going down in Georgia, in D.C., and so on. Okay,
so then let's talk about Mark Meadows. The word coming down that he got immunity to testify, which he has done to the federal grand jury, which he has done 3 times, according to the ABC News report. What do you make of that?
Well, so not entirely surprising that he has an immunity deal with the prosecution, because he was not named as an unindicted co-conspirator in that January 6th federal indictment. Rudy Giuliani, it's speculated, was, some of the other individuals were, but not Mark Meadows. And that was, I think, really suggestive that he perhaps was already cooperating with the government, providing this testimony at the grand jury. This, I think, is a really, really big deal and a major development in this case, because Mark Meadows, as chief of staff to Donald Trump, was literally in the room where it happened. So he is in a position to talk about what he and Trump talked about, what Trump's mental state was like, and whether there were other individuals who are likely going to be witnesses who corroborate Mark Meadows' testimony. So this is a very big deal. Should be noted, Mark Meadows remains an actual defendant in the Georgia criminal case that Fonnie Willis has brought. So there may be some complications here, as he has immunity with the feds, but he has no such immunity that we know of, and no such plea deal with the Georgia prosecution.
Well, no such plea deal yet.
Well, I mean,
do you think, well, would you be surprised if you saw that he got a deal in the Georgia case?
I would not be surprised. And he is a very valuable witness in the Georgia case in much the same way someone like Jenna Ellis was. He was close to the people who were really at the heart of these alleged criminal conspiracies. And he has a lot he could offer. And again, the fact that he has immunity in this federal prosecution, but no similar immunity in the state level prosecution, there's a mismatch here, and he may want to correct that.
You mentioned her name, Jenna Ellis. I love how it started. This is election interference, and we're going to show the fraud, to crying in court. I'm sorry, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have. What'd you make of that?
Well, so she said some things that I think were really interesting, very different from what Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro said. So one of the things she noted is that as a lawyer, she was a younger lawyer, and she was really deferring to the judgment of older, more experienced lawyers. And I think we can speculate that the older, more experienced lawyer to whom she is referring is Rudy Giuliani. So that means she's probably in a really great position to provide the prosecution with more information about Giuliani's own role in all of this and how that relates to Donald Trump. So she is the lady of the hour. I think her plea deal is perhaps the most significant here. I mean, she has a lot of tentacles, both in the fake elector scheme, also in the Georgia voting machine scheme. So she has a lot of information that she could provide here.
Okay, real quick. Have you ever in your entire life heard of one mob boss testifying against another mob boss in court?
So, again, I don't have a lot of experience with mob trials outside of The Sopranos, but if we were going to have such a scenario, not necessarily with mob bosses, but generally with individuals involved in two very distinct conspiracies, this might be the place where it happens.
I'm just asking, because Rudy Giuliani taking the stand against Donald Trump, I might have to show up in court.
Explosive.
Melissa Murray, thank you so much
for
coming back to the Sunday Show.